The coffee shop was crowded that Tuesday morning, every table occupied by people hunched over laptops or engaged in animated conversations. Emma stood in the doorway, her crutch gripping tightly under her left arm, her eyes scanning the busy room with growing anxiety. At 16, she'd learned to read a room quickly, to spot the people who would avert their eyes, the ones who'd suddenly save an empty chair with their bag, the ones who'd make her feel like an inconvenience before she even opened her mouth. That's when she saw him. A man in his early 30s sat alone at a corner table, his dark hair slightly disheveled, his eyes fixed on a worn paperback novel. But what caught Emma's attention wasn't the man himself, it was the empty chair across from him, gloriously unoccupied, and the way he seemed genuinely absorbed in his book rather than performatively busy like so many others. Taking a deep breath, Emma made her way through the maze of tables, her crutch tapping rhythmically against the hardwood floor. She could feel eyes following her movement, that familiar weight of unwanted attention that had become part of her daily existence since the accident 2 years ago. When she reached his table, she cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can I sit here?" The man looked up, and for a moment, Emma braced herself for the reaction she'd come to expect. The flash of discomfort, the awkward pause, the polite but firm excuse about waiting for someone. Instead, his face broke into a warm smile that reached his eyes. "Of course," he said, immediately closing his book and moving it aside. But he didn't stop there. He stood up, pulled out the chair for her, and waited patiently as she maneuvered herself into position, leaning her crutch against the wall. "I'm Michael, by the way." "Emma," she replied, feeling her shoulders relax for the first time since entering the cafe. She set down her hot chocolate and tried to appear casual, though her hands trembled slightly around the warm cup. Michael returned to his seat and reopened his book, but after a moment, he glanced up with a curious expression. "I hope you don't mind me saying, but you look like you could use more than just hot chocolate. Have you had breakfast?" Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I'm fine, really. I just needed somewhere to sit for a while." Michael studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful rather than pitying. "You know what? I was just thinking about ordering their cinnamon rolls. They're absolutely massive, way too much for one person. Would you help me out by sharing one? I hate wasting food." It was such a transparent kindness that Emma almost refused out of pride. But something about Michael's genuine tone, the way he framed it as her doing him a favor rather than charity, made her nod slowly. "Okay. But only if you let me pay half." "Deal," Michael said, though Emma suspected he had no intention of accepting her money. As they waited for the food, uncomfortable silence settled between them. Emma found herself studying Michael covertly. There was a sadness in his eyes that he couldn't quite hide, a heaviness that seemed at odds with his warm demeanor. She noticed he wore a wedding ring, but kept glancing at it as if reminding himself of something painful. "You don't have to tell me," Michael said suddenly, startling her out of her thoughts, "but you seem like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. And trust me, I know that look. I've seen it in the mirror enough times." Emma's first instinct was to deflect, to offer some casual lie about having a bad day. But something about this stranger's openness, his lack of judgment, made the walls she'd so carefully constructed begin to crumble. "I used to be a dancer," she heard herself say. "Ballet was my entire life. I was preparing for an audition with a prestigious company in New York when..." She paused, her fingers tightening around her cup. "Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. My left leg was crushed. They did everything they could, but eventually, they had to amputate below the knee." Michael didn't offer empty platitudes about everything happening for a reason or silver linings. He simply nodded, his expression one of genuine understanding. "And today is the day I'm supposed to get fitted for my prosthetic leg," Emma admitted, feeling tears prick at her eyes. "The appointment is in an hour. I've been circling this block for 30 minutes because I'm terrified. What if it doesn't work? What if I can never dance again? What if this is just who I am now, the girl with one leg who used to be someone?" "My daughter loved to dance," Michael said quietly, and Emma saw his eyes grow distant. "Lily. She was 7. She'd put on these elaborate performances in our living room, terrible choreography, completely offbeat, but performed with absolute conviction." He smiled at the memory, but Emma could see the pain etched into every line of his face. "Loved?" Emma asked softly, though she already knew. "Cancer. We lost her 6 months ago. Michael's voice cracked slightly, but he continued. My wife couldn't handle it. The grief was too much. She left 3 months after the funeral. So now it's just me, trying to figure out how to keep breathing when everything that mattered is gone. Emma felt tears streaming down her face, but this time they weren't just for herself. I'm so sorry. Here's what I learned from Lily, Michael said, leaning forward with an intensity that commanded attention. She never gave up. Even when the treatments made her so weak she could barely stand, she'd still ask me to put on music so she could move, even if it was just her arms, even if it was just her fingers dancing. She taught me that who we are isn't defined by what we've lost, but by how we choose to keep living despite it. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a worn photograph, sliding it across the table. Emma saw a little girl with wild curly hair and an enormous smile, frozen mid-leap in a sparkly tutu, pure joy radiating from the image. The day before Lily died, Michael continued, his voice thick with emotion, she made me promise something. She said, Daddy, when you see someone who's sad or scared, you have to help them remember they're brave. She was 7 years old and dying, and she was worried about other people. Emma couldn't stop crying now, but neither could Michael. Two strangers, sharing a table in their deepest wounds, connected by the universal language of loss and survival. So here's what I want to tell you, Emma, Michael said, reaching across the table and gently taking her hand. You're not the girl who used to be someone. You're the girl who survived something that could have killed you. You're the girl who still has dreams, even when those dreams got complicated. And you're brave enough to keep showing up, even when you're terrified. That's not less than who you were, that's more. Emma squeezed his hand, unable to speak through her tears. The waitress arrived with their cinnamon roll, took one look at them both crying, and quietly set it down before retreating. I can't promise the prosthetic will be easy, Michael continued. I can't promise you'll dance the way you used to. But I can promise that you're stronger than you think, and that the story isn't over. Lily's story ended, and I'd give anything to change that. But yours is still being written. They sat together for another 30 minutes, eating cinnamon roll and sharing stories, Michael's memories of Lily, Emma's memories of dance. He told her about Lily's obsession with butterflies, how she'd insisted that when she died, she'd become one so she could still visit him. Emma told him about her first ballet recital, how she'd forgotten her entire routine and just spun in circles until the music ended. When it was time for Emma to leave for her appointment, Michael walked her to the door. You've got this, he said firmly. And if you ever need a reminder of how brave you are, you come find me. I'm here every Tuesday morning, same table, keeping a promise to my little girl. Emma hugged him tightly, this stranger who'd become something more in the span of an hour. Thank you, she whispered. For seeing me. For not looking away. Thank you, Michael replied, for reminding me why I need to keep showing up too. As Emma walked toward the prosthetics clinic, her crutch tapping a steady rhythm against the sidewalk, she felt different. The fear was still there, but it was quieter now, overshadowed by something stronger, hope, determination, and the knowledge that kindness from a stranger could change everything. She thought about Lily, about Michael, about the way broken people could help each other find reasons to keep going. And for the first time since the accident, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't ending. It was simply learning